quick, George, you really look strange. They're kind of as with the
It's
background. You're wearing
it's
your green coat or something.
The ghost
Yeah,
of Mrs.
exactly.
Muir.
It's kind of the floating head there.
the floating head. Absolutely.
So let me go through real quickly the folks that I've got, and if we need to do some introductions, we can do that, and then we'll jump into the agenda and we'll get going. There's Melanie and Alan McDonald. Okay. So in terms of those that I have so far, George Amendola, Cyberdynamics, Sasha Burrows with the Consortium, Brian Chung, City of Moore Park, Kyle Detz, Cox, Melanie Downing, Magellan, Jamie Fleming, Ojai Chamber, Greg Hayward, Trackable Health, Darren Kettle, VCTC, Steve Sawyer, Charter Communications, myself, Andy Sobel, City of Santa Paula, Steve Weingart, Ridge Communications, Lynn Cardoza, Wave Business. I see Noel Heredia, Value Creations, Petra Gomez, Santa Barbara County Foundation, Alan McDonald. Alan, who are you with?
All connected?
All connected. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
And let's see, Rubii Estes. Rubii, who are you with?
Santa Barbara Foundation.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Glad that you're with us. And who did I forget? Who did I not get? Darcel Elliott, you just joined us.
Yes, hi. I'm Darcel Elliott. I'm Chief of Staff for Supervisor Doss Williams' office.
Thank you so much, Darcel, for joining us. We're happy you're here.
Yeah, thank you. I used to attend these meetings way back when they first started and then dropped off. So glad to be a part of it again.
Yeah, let me do a real quick email because somebody, it looks like got a link from last week's trying to get in this week. Let me see if I can take care of that real quick. Let me do this real quickly if I can. Okay, so I hope you can see the agenda. I hope it's in front of you. And what we're going to do is try to cover it pretty quickly. The infrastructure deployment discussion topic will go rather quickly. The broadband adoption topic will go rather quickly. We'll get an update and related to the Ventura County Middle Mile Regional Network. Melanie, are you going to be providing that for us, or do you think Jory will be joining us?
I'm on the call, Bill.
Oh, Jory.
Good morning, everyone.
There you are, right in front of me. Okay. And then we'll talk about, I'll give you an update on the presentation we've been working on in community convenings and our approach to digital inclusion. Provide you with some discussions about smart city technology innovation. Have a roundtable, time allowed, and I'm going to like to try to adjourn no later than 9:45. Because there is a forum in Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo today, and that starts at 10 o'clock, 10 to 11:30, and this is the first of a two-part forum. So would like everybody to be able to catch their breath, and make whatever stops needed, and go and attend the San Luis Obispo event. So with that, that's our agenda. This is an email that I sent it was a response to an email I sent about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, to Cuyama. It was the CPUC. It was basically the folks in Cuyama, as you know, we've been talking about it for several years now. And the Frontier came in and provided some applications to CSF and we were excited about the chance of having fiber go from Santa Maria up into Cuyama. Then all of a sudden we had the Connect America Fund, and GeoLinks went into Cuyama and was very interested in providing support to Cuyama. And then we had RDOF, and RDOF came along this last year, and a third company came in and they picked up funding to provide broadband to Cuyama. And I basically asked CPUC, we're still waiting for broadband. There's three, potential interested parties to provide it. What's the lay of the land? What is important, and what should we be doing? Because the residents want to know what can they do and where do they go? What's going to happen first? Can we have and so just give us a direction. And this is what came back. And the good news is, I think it's a good chronology of what happened in the last few months. At the same time, it's not a straightforward answer of who's going to break ground first and when do we solve the problem. And so that's kind of the state of affairs. I wanted to share this exclamation with you because it does a great job of talking about what we've gone through. It's hurry up and wait in some cases. And so anyway, I find the first paragraph astonishing, and 54 applications went in this last year for CSF funding. 13 have been awarded so far. The status of the remaining ones are yet to be determined. There's not sufficient funding in CSF to meet them all. Meanwhile, CSF, a lot of those funds were used as leverage funding for a number of the RDOF the RDOF, for those not familiar, came out of FCC, and it's federal money versus state money. And so some of those CSF funds were used to leverage, and it's in kind for the RDOF applications. And it looks like that we're going to be in this position until March 31, in which we see additional awards coming down the pike, but probably most likely not all of them. Meanwhile, we've got communities to work on and continue to move forward with. And Jory, I don't know if you've been watching AB 14 and SB 4 at all. Is there any update and status of those pieces of legislation?
Yeah, they're still moving forward, and amendments are being gathered right now. Comments are being gathered. Many of the committees that have been formed, some that I sit on, have already started to organize a whole set of comments that'll be submitted. So we are going to get an update tomorrow afternoon on where they are. So I'll have more information for your next call, Bill. But last I checked, which was about a week ago, things are still moving forward, and we are attempting to make more of the money available for municipalities, and speaking to the governor's executive order of 100 meg, making those matters very clear in the legislation right now.
Yeah. For those interested as well, there was a call this last week with CPUC staff about a statewide cost model. CPUC pulled on some national known consultants and looked at the state of California, and they came up with some number that for a basic 25 and 3 situation, speeds that, I think it was like 5 billion and some change to, fund statewide to get 100%. They had another number for the middle mile connections statewide. And so, they've looked at a lot of the numbers and a lot of the funding required to do what needs to be done. And some analysis has been done, and I'm sure that's going to be released as time goes on. And I can share with you what has been released if you're interested in that. But big numbers, big dollars, big discussions. Hopefully it'll find its way to where it needs to go at some point in time this year. So any other discussions about infrastructure at this point before we move on to adoption? Hearing none. Just a reminder that there is another fund at CSF for adoption, and this is a big topic right now. a number of, when I say adoption, I big umbrella, digital inclusion, digital literacy. This is the people side of the equation. And in Ventura County, we already have a 98% connection rate, and it goes up to 96 and 94 as you move north to the other two counties. We still have adoption numbers of 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, but there's a reason a significant population, they don't connect and use it. And so these really are people situations, people reasons, people problems. And we'll be talking more about this, as our meeting this morning continues, in terms of dealing with communities and people and the issues and opportunities that are there. But suffice it to say, this is the kinds of funds that are available to have the kinds of programs we need, programs in community training centers, city halls, a number of different libraries. We're very thrilled that, and we put a letter of support in for the Ventura County Library System. They had a concept for mobile training classrooms where you could drive into any community and provide teaching and also provide access. And we think that's we as an advocate for those kinds of proposals, we greased the skids the best we could with CPUC, and think that we want to encourage other communities, other organizations, not-for-profits to do the same kind of thing. There's funds available, and we ask that if you need help putting proposals together to get clearance and to get on the radar and to get the funding, we're here to help you do that. So any discussion at this point? We'll be circling around talking about it in just a little bit more in detail, but with a model, but just wanted to just provide you this briefing now. Middle Mile Regional Networks. Jory, why don't you provide us an update? I appreciate you being here to do that.
Thank you, Bill.
You want to share screen, and are you going to do it off of your computer?
Actually, I'm going to share a different screen. If you give me share capabilities, I'll go ahead and do that. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
So what you see, it's a map which is a little bit different from what Bill was showing you earlier. This is a new map which depicts not only the segments that have been designed for the middle mile backbone network, but it also has within it, it has zones. These segments in these zones are now broken up into various projects that we've uncovered or assets that we've uncovered while working with many of you and working with many of the cities, the water districts, the county, and other transportation and other agencies throughout. And we've identified a way in which to build the middle mile backbone network for Ventura County, connecting all of the cities in the county by looking at existing traffic signal interconnect systems, by looking at various rail lines, by looking at existing pole assets for aerial deployment, by looking at existing empty conduit, by looking at existing fiber optics throughout cities and the county, but also looking at capital projects with water districts, the county, and in some cities. And these capital projects are allowing for opportunities for joint build. This map, besides the segments, we decided to add zones to it, and you can see the zones A, B, C, all the way through zone M. And these zones depict areas in which we would be building out last mile from the middle mile backbone to provide residents, businesses, and anchor institutions, as well as government facilities, connectivity to fiber and the middle mile backbone that would be connected in the north to the city of Santa Clarita, and in the south down into a data center in the city of Agoura Hills. And you can see Santa Clarita up in the northeast portion of Zone A, and Agoura Hills down in the southeast portion of Zone M. This map is going to be used to go out with an RFI to ask for various service providers to respond to their interest in partnering in building out or using these assets, both the middle mile backbone itself that you see as network segments, but also building out the last mile in each of these zones. So we'll be collecting information about building the middle mile backbone itself, but also the infill, the last mile that they're interested in connecting residents, businesses, anchors, and governments. The RFI is, final draft is near complete. It will be issued hopefully sometime within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And it will be, from that, we'll be obtaining various partnership opportunities, and then we will enter into discussions with the service providers, talking about use of these public assets and joint build in these public capital improvement projects. What you see in red is new underground construction. In dark blue is an aerial approach. And in pink is existing conduit that's in the ground. Green is existing traffic signal interconnect that is of sufficient size to accommodate fiber. In many cases, it will have to be rehabilitated to support fiber because it currently supports copper. So it needs to be redesigned or retrofit to support the characteristics of fiber, which does not bend like copper does. It also contains in yellow existing fiber that there is in some of the cities, as well as in light blue, various water projects with water districts, both the state water project in zone, going from zone E to zone I through zone H, but also water projects along the 118 on zones J and zone H. All of these projects put together are now hopefully going to be facilitating others to want to invest and want to joint build using existing assets again, or joint build with the various public entities. So that's where we're at with the project. A phased implementation plan is under development right now. There are some areas that are being prioritized based upon unserved and underserved communities and other characteristics that we'll be able to share with you in a future meeting. But that's pretty much a wrap up for where we are right now, Bill.
Thank you, Jory. This particular map is really, really impressive, and it's powerful from a consortium standpoint. I really, and I'll Andy Sobel's with us, and Andy, when it comes to Zone C, Santa Paula, I mean, all of a sudden we have a local discussion that can take place. Not only is there fiber that'll be going through town, but then there's all kinds of discussions of what to do with fiber in the town. And so that conversation is appropriate in all these zones. And so the opportunity to focus and bring a focus, Jamie, to Ojai as well, it really, it's a visual that I think is going to be really empowering to civic leaders in each of our towns. So any discussion about this, Jory, as soon as you think that this can be a shared picture, I'd really welcome a copy of it, because I'd like to pass it around and create awareness and visibility. Understanding that there's an RFI process and you may want to wait until the release of the RFI, that's fine. But
yeah, there's some final minor tweaks that we'll be doing to the map. There are some adjustments that are going to be made with some new assets that have been found and are under consideration to be used. Also, one of the things I did not mention is that the RFI, when it goes out, we've already done a high-level design and for this project, and our engineers have put together a bill of materials. So we know the length of every one of these segments. We know, based upon the type of construction which is being proposed, we know the cost of the construction. And so we now have what's called a bill of materials, which defines the, which will be included in the RFI, which will define and detail the length of the segment, the type of construction, and from that, our estimated cost. So we now have good estimates of what each of these segments will cost, and we'll be able to share that with you in the near future as well. Yeah. We are speaking with the county, and we are looking for grant writers, and we are anticipating that we'll be applying for various grants in the coming months.
Letting you know that this conversation is also occurring, but not as this advanced, up in the northern Santa Barbara County area. And I know that one of the outcomes from the event over the next 2 days in San Luis Obispo County is a similar approach and commitment to interconnect the municipalities and provide this middle mile redundancy, resiliency for the region up north as well. So we're ahead of the power curve, but the other two counties are following real closely behind. And we should be getting to this position as well. Okay.
Any questions?
Discussion? Yeah.
I had one question, Jory. The eastern third or so of Simi Valley is not in there. Is that related to the end of the line, so to speak, around it's like Tahoe Canyon? Or is that something that needs to be cleaned up as far as the service area? For section L.
We are, well, the intent really for each of these was to have the middle mile backbone connect to each of the city halls within each of the communities. And then the last mile would be built out from city halls or that public facility, with that public facility, city hall being a potential hub site. There may be some changes along those lines, but again, the middle mile backbone was intended not to cover the entire community, but to connect to a hub site in each of the communities. And then the last mile will be built out from that site.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Jory, you see this big picture occurring in 3 phases or more?
Actually, we see 5 phases at this point.
Okay.
It may be 4 because there may be 2 segments that actually move forward together. Where the others, I think, will end up being separate segments that will be built not in kind with another one.
You've done a lot of great work here. Yeah, and it's looking very real and doable at this point. George.
Yeah, and looking at these segments now that we've got it's segmented, the costs are not overwhelming. The interesting thing here too is that, and the prices may still come down, but when we started this project and looked at what the cost might be if we had to do all new construction and without identifying any existing assets, which has been the majority of the work that's been done so far in talking to over 140, 150 people at all the public agencies throughout the county. Those assets have contributed to significantly lower the cost of building this asset. Original costs were around $37 million. So the price tag now looks like it's between 18 to 20 million for the entire network. Yeah. When you look at each of these segments individually, they take, for example, the segment along the 126 highway, which goes through A, B, and C, connecting to the Ventura County, the City of Ventura network in E. That is $6.1 million. So biting off each of these individually is something which is quite doable. And of course, we expect this is not going to be built in 1 year. This is going to be built, these segments will be built, and the infill will be done over the course of the next 5 years.
Yeah. It'll be great. It's going to be great. Any other questions about this real quick?
I have a couple, if I might, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Jory, what is the time frame for the RFP release?
The RFI should be going out in 3 to 4 weeks, all going well. We're we're talking with procurement right now, and a meeting to finalize dates is going to take place sometime the beginning of next week. So I don't have actual dates that it'll be issued yet, but I can. We're estimating between 3 and 4 weeks.
Okay, and you disclosed about 18 to 20 million in total capital to build the network. How many route miles will this cover for that 18 to 20 million?
The total route miles, I don't have that number off the top of my head, George, and I don't want to put out an incorrect figure.
Okay. You have a ballpark or not?
No, but I could get that for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Just a couple questions as far as participation from the zones or the cities outlined in the zones. Are you expecting that a dig once policy within each of these cities and within the county will be a significant contributor to some of these builds, or will that be separate?
At this point in time, we don't believe that dig once policies are necessary. We have had conversations and we have sent out materials to each of the cities, and they have responded in, each of them have responded of their willingness to participate and make their assets available. Of course, those discussions have not begun yet. Of course, they're not finalized, but each of the public agencies have shown a willingness to contribute their assets, and the interest in the joint build amongst public agencies, that has already been solved, and the mandate for dig once is not a requirement. There's already been a verbal commitment for the water districts to work with the county, and in many cases, or most cases, the cities to work with the county collectively to share assets to build this.
Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it.
This seems like a good time to talk about, there's a group in Southern California called the Digital Divide Coalition, Consortium, I don't know. It's a group that's moving forward with how do you fast-paced permits. And I know that Terry Theobald will be going before the Ventura County Board of Supervisors next week with a recommendation to look at this standard set of permitting procedures and policies. I haven't seen the final. I've got draft copies that this group is putting out. I haven't seen Terry's final recommendation. I know he's modified it slightly, but they're based on where that goes. You know, I'll be wanting to share that widely in all the cities and do comparable things, because George, as you talk about dig once, you know, when we just have standard approaches to accelerate and expedite digs, you know, that's going to really help things occur, and there'll be a lot of momentum tied to that. So there is a push. It's coming our way. It'll hit the county level this next week. I expect to want to move it forward to the various cities as well as up the coast in the months to come, and you know, next few months actually. So heads up. Any other topics here before we move on?
Good morning. This is Fernando Baez with Yeagas Municipal Water District. Just one request. I agree, Bill, that that map is very powerful and useful. When that map is released, is there a way to add a legend so someone like myself who's trying to catch up here understands the various dispositions of the colors and the regions would help me understand that a lot better. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it will be added. This is just one of our rough cuts, but it does have a legend when we share it, and it will have a legend in the RFI, definitely.
So Fernando, I'm not sure that you're on our mailing list. I'll put you on it today.
Yes, thank you.
In terms of the talking points that went out today, it doesn't have the zones, but it does have an earlier version of the route that we were talking about, and a legend as well. So
Perfect.
You know, I'm anxious to get the zone ones to kick off the community network discussion, but you know, this will serve as a placeholder in terms of the earlier version, in terms of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the next topic. This is I think I've shared this with you. I've teased this topic for the last meeting or two. I don't think we've played for this group the entire presentation. It's so far been very limited in terms of its distribution. We're still, the ink is not dry. At the same time, we're gathering a lot of thoughts, a lot of feedback, and it's what I would call a community transformational model. There's a lot of pieces in the slides that you'll see. There's a lot of words in the slide that you'll see. And you know, in some of the earlier presentations, as I went out and started trying to brief it, I would never get it right. I would always leave off important parts. And so now we've got, you know, an animation, we've got a discussion. I'll be looking forward to playing it with you, commenting about it, and getting any feedback you have. And you can certainly email me afterwards as well with any particular feedback you might have. So let me get out of this. And can you still see the slide, or do I need to reshare? Let me try to reshare. Okay. Can everybody see that? The black screen?
Yeah,
Black
yeah,
one.
we can.
Okay, here we go.
The Broadband Consortium of the Pacific Coast is the funded collaborative tasked with convening regional stakeholders and partners to create, deploy, and deliver broadband for all. In our communities today, we find ourselves disconnected, discouraged, and distracted. There is a solution. Broadband is the fourth utility. It is the key, the bridge, and the power for our future communities. Today's leaders will recognize this vision as both compelling and necessary. Our aim is to build a resource pool of inspired explorers within our communities to make this happen. What do we do to get broadband for all? A place where people are connected, where people have resources, and where we are pursuing our dreams. As the fourth utility, broadband provides opportunity for all to engage. Where water quenches thirst, electricity and gas heat homes, broadband creates and grows communities. It doesn't care who we are, high or low in social standing, we're all the same. It doesn't limit access. We can all go anywhere and do anything. It provides unlimited opportunity. With digital literacy, we can follow our dreams and create our future. Achieving this vision occurs through connections for all of us. Broadband provides the progressive rungs towards growth for people and communities. We believe that inspiration, combined with innovation and perspiration, can forge a new path. So how does this occur? Why discuss broadband when there are so many other challenges to address? The reason is that access to the internet is not just another issue. Rather, It is a foundational community connection on which all problem-solving efforts rely. When looking at all the issues to solve, broadband should be the first and primary thing if civic leaders intend to create the community of the future. Broadband is the infrastructure that links all needs of the community and the people that live there. It enables conversation, commerce, and collaboration. It allows for tangible outcomes by creating new technology-enabled solutions. Broadband enables us to bridge that which divides us. What is the next step? Where do we start? In climbing the ladder, we realize that this includes everyone, the entire community, the public, private, and not-for-profit stakeholders. The first rung of the ladder involves convening a group to survey existing assets for creating and maintaining a community network. Collaborative funding will accelerate the establishment and delivery of this rung. Think about music. The second rung is the opportunity for organizations with different strengths to create a jam session of sorts, where the jam is the project. The music is playing now. The entire community becomes part of the dance. There's room for everyone that wants to participate. The third rung of the ladder assembles the community's assets in a manner where we can innovate projects and deploy new capacity. We now have the flexibility to address the unique challenges recognized within our community, setting the stage for a successful smart city. This is a value-creating system that will attract the general population, enabling a new idea and execution cycle. The outcome of these three rungs are mechanisms that engage stakeholders, resolve equity issues, and result in unique, forward-looking problem-solving for our newly connected community.
So my thanks to Noel Heredia, who's with us today in putting this together, and the sequence, the PowerPoint, the animation is his contribution to what we're trying to do, and it really reflects a lot of what we've already been doing. If you look at the regional level, you know, what Jory just showed you was, you know, the second rung of the ladder. It basically is the coming together of a conceptual design, of a layout. He's done the inventory analysis that we were talking about. And we're following this model pretty closely in terms of piloting it right now in the city of Guadalupe. That particular community has a civic business council. They've seen this. They've convened a task force of sorts within their city. They're wanting to move forward and have the conversations and do the analysis and come up with a plan. There's a number of themes that come out about all of this, isn't it? Part of the themes are everybody's got to participate. It's got to be very, very local. And no one community is going to handle it the same way. You know, and so I mentioned earlier, digital divides, digital literacies, all of these things come into play. But the reasons are different no matter where you go and what community is involved. And so, you know, what we're encouraging as a consortia is that these are separate conversations. And that's where I get very excited about Jory's picture of the various zones, because all of a sudden it provides a map that here is a methodology, here is a roadmap for each of those zones to come up with unique approaches to build community networks and interconnects and collaboration within their respective communities for this shared vision. So you take this message and this roadmap, you take Jory's zone map that he's put together for our region, and we've got this opportunity to move forward and pursue the same kind of vision for our communities, recognizing the path is going to be different. It's going to be different because all of our cities are different. So With that, Noel, is there anything you'd add to what I've said?
No, I think this is good. This is just a conversation starter, just to get, animate and the community and get them excited. I think you're right. In combination with Jory's map, you're not broken the problem into smaller pieces. Now you're solving only locally, and there's somebody who's looking at interconnecting the bigger picture. I think this is a good starting point.
Yeah, there was a conversation a week before last, I believe now, talking about digital literacy. We played an earlier version of this. It was a little bit longer and a little bit, we've shortened and tightened it up a bit, but United Way, the Community Foundation, Interface, a number of other organizations saw this and they're wanting to know how they can help, how they can support, what we can do together. So the conversations are unfolding and the direction's unfolding. It's an exciting time, I believe, for transformation to occur. And hopefully with, inserting technology and having stakeholders come together and plan a future together with a process together, we're going to make some forward progress. We're getting to that critical mass and that tipping point. But I do welcome all the feedback you have. There's things that we're still learning about this. Language is a big part of it. Early adopters, we clearly believe, if you're familiar with that term, are the audience. It's people that are looking forward. It's people that see this kind of stuff. They understand these kinds of words. They're studying and watching the community dynamics. They've got a heart for community. This won't appeal to everybody, and it's not meant to. It's meant for people that want to be part of a consortium, that want to be doing the work of the consortium in our communities, to have these kinds of conversations occur. So it's a friendly audience telling people what we're about, but also inviting them to participate.
I have a comment. I'm curious, in this community network, what are the hardest to reach partners? Who are the hardest to reach partners that you'd like to engage to be successful in this last mile and create digital equity?
It's a good question, and it's not any one partner. It's what we find is that the division, we come into a community and we'll find out that because somebody's at the table, the other people won't want to go to the table. And so what you've got to do is target a civic leader that has the ability to convene both of these partners. And so it's way above our pay grade. It really is local, in that the convening has to be local, and there's certain people that can serve as trusted agents, can serve as bridge builders, and get those to the table. And if you can't do that, you can't move it forward. But it's not anything. It's not anyone. It's all of us. And so we want to spend some time just talking about language, and it's all inclusive language. That we've got to move the train forward, but we've got to get everybody on the train for the train to move forward. And that's just, it's, as I talked about adoption earlier, the problems are not at this point broadband deployment. The problems at this point are people. And we're spending a lot of time now trying to break the code and get people connected to one another to move this thing forward.
It's an interesting question, because that's exactly what we found. There's no technological issue. You might even argue there's not even a financial issue, really. From what Jory's been saying, you break up the problem and it's not necessarily a financial issue. The issue is really, at the end of the day, it's hearts and minds. And people are going to be, it's just a chemistry of a group of people coming together. And that's one of the things that we realize, that you cannot come with a set playbook. This is how you're going to do it, and this is what it built. You've got to figure out what makes sense to every community, is going to figure it out, because they got to own it. And we keep talking about building out, but it's more than building out. Once you built out, then who's going to maintain it? The long haul is what a lot of people tend to forget in their, chasing the shiny object of building out something. They forget about how it's going to be maintained, how it's going to be sustained. And that's where the community is so critical. Language is
Maintenance is very important too, but also finding practical uses and getting people to adopt broadband is also one of the things that is foremost for digital inclusion. It is not, like you say, you're right, it's not a technology issue. In some respects, or infrastructure issue, although there are some financial issues related to it in that it has not been cost effective, or there is no profit to build into areas where there's not enough densification to be able to support the market and to support the CapEx costs and the OpEx costs to support the utility. So that's where government really needs to step in, and government creating these partnerships within their communities. And like you say, there are social nonprofits that need to be involved. There are adult training centers. There's workforce investment boards. There are colleges and community colleges and university programs that need to be implemented that utilize broadband and offer training in broadband. There's low-income housing units and community clinics that need to be connected to make sure that others can participate in telework, telehealth, and distance learning. The schools need to have robust communications for that, as well as the residents themselves, the students living, in these multi-dwelling units. There needs to be policies adopted at the local level to make sure that low-income housing units have structured cabling systems to support broadband, not just to the premise, but to the unit within the premise. There's a lot there in the formula for digital inclusion. But I think the point that everyone is making, and it is so true, is that it does take champions and leadership within each of the communities.
One of the other things is that for the longest time, we go from city hall to city hall to city hall, and they'd say, step in, get in line. My list is long. I've got all of these things on the list on the top, left of the screen, and social equity, distance learning, education, and not realizing that, broadband is not the ninth thing on the list. Broadband is what interconnects them all. And you get in a room and you're trying to solve one of them. And if you haven't solved the broadband issue yet, you can't really make progress on the one you're trying to solve. And so they're like dominoes. If we can solve the broadband one, the rest of the dominoes will start falling as a result of that. And we're hoping to trigger a light bulb where people will say, of the issues, broadband ought to be first in line because the other issues are dependent upon it.
I think it's been a glaring void in a time of crisis, and that's where the opportunity lies. And I really appreciate the lens on government subsidies are not sustainable. So there has to be localized infrastructure and a desire to look at high density residential users as an asset that'll become a better, stronger workforce, students that'll thrive. So this does take a lot of community champions. I'll take note of that. But also the community-based organizations. I'd love to continue this conversation from the foundation perspective and how we can be of help.
It's really you're very astute. You can bring the infrastructure to people. For example, in low-income housing units, most of these properties, these MDUs, have community centers or community rooms. And so you connect the building, but you'll find that most of the residents don't even sign up for broadband because you haven't given them a real purpose, or you haven't trained them, or you haven't socialized them in how this can change their lives. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work around that. The Boys and Girls Club is a good example. We've connected a number of community rooms in low-income housing multi-dwelling units, and the Boys and Girls Club would come in. We would provide, high-end computers and Wi-Fi in these community rooms. But then, who was handling the programming? Who was managing the after-school, homework programs? Who was handling the adult training programs? Who was socializing these people in this new communications, methodologies, and bringing them into the world of virtual information and virtual services. So there's a very important human element involved.
Ruby, I'll plug you into the Guadalupe discussion.
Great.
Yeah, Garrett Matsura is the guy that narrated this, and he lives there in Guadalupe, and he's right in the middle of where the strategies they're talking about, what the problems they're trying to solve, the networks they want to build, the innovation that they want to, try to see occurring in terms of training and education, and he's convening the stakeholders and making this happen. Once again, local. It's all, he's got the former mayor and the current council and a number of folks that are all talking about this stuff, and you'd have a good seat at that table, and it'd be very appropriate. I think it'd be wonderful that you're interested.
We very much are. Just one last question and I'll stop. I wanted to get, as you are the experts here, what is there excitement, kind of what is the reaction to FCC's release of the EBB this week? I mean, is there excitement or concern that we've been around this bend before? Is this really going to generate excitement around localized initiatives for connecting that last mile and bringing people, creating the environment where people will want to use this utility and prioritization?
Jory, you want to take a stab at that? I've got my, I think it's early on. It's soon right now, but I don't know if
I'll wait. No worries.
Yeah, Jory, you may have a broader view than what I'm aware of, but I've seen the presentations this last week and tuned into the meetings, and it's a monumental effort.
Well, there's approximately $8 billion available now for broadband grants, and that amount of money all at one time has never been made available in the past. So this is a very exciting time. Unfortunately, most of the agencies, especially NTIA, that just picked up quite a bit of this money, are still trying to define the rules by which people apply and actually can get access to it. They're overwhelmed. They did not have the staffing for this, and of course, this is a great opportunity, but in some cases, it almost looks like a tidal wave, and so we've got to figure out how to distribute, first of all, how to set up the rules for distributing this money, and how to do that equitably throughout the country. Most of it's going to be going to rural America, I can guarantee you that. And quite a bit of money has been set aside for tribal communities, which is, for the first time, it's good to see that the government is putting the money to fill in the gaps rather than leaving it solely to the private sector to try to do that on behalf of the public.
Thank you.
Any other comments? We'll move on.
I just have one, Bill. I have an answer to George's question. George, the number of route miles is just under 180.
Thanks, Jory. Appreciate that.
You say 108, Jory, or 180?
180.
180, okay. All right, moving on, just make a quick update here. We'll spend some more time talking about this as time goes on. This is the, I've mentioned in the past, Coastal Trident Advanced Navy Technology Exercise. We're looking for smart city technology applications. This last week, I stumbled across a company called Easy Mile. They have autonomous people movers, and I'm going to be talking to them, hoping that we can make a connection. A big part of looking at what's one of the issues in just talking to municipalities and VCTC, when buses go to bus stops, if there's a way to get people to bus stops, especially if it's raining, and sometimes like in a Navy base, or if even at CSUCI, if you have a confine where you could have autonomous vehicles picking up students or picking up people on the base, taking them to the bus stops, it'd be a help. That technology exists, the companies exist. If we can demonstrate it and show how it works, it's kind of cool stuff. And so we're going through a conversation in the next few weeks where we get a whole boatload of cool stuff Off to the right, healthcare, public safety, fire detection, all in those domains, all in those use cases. And we'll look forward to sharing that with you and inviting those vendors to come to our area and share their technology, and looking for a partnership of municipalities in bringing this kind of stuff forward. So that's the goal. That's where we're heading. And there will be a discussion this next week on the 23rd, where Alan Yeager, who's involved with technology transfer with us, will provide more about the projects involved and the demonstrations that will occur and the planning process that's underway. Okay. That's it for now at 9:30 in the morning. I wanted to remind everybody about what is happening this morning in San Luis Obispo County. They have their first of 2 series. The next one will be next Thursday. It's 10 to 11:30. So, normally these forums would have been a half day or maybe even a full day. We've done it both ways. And what they've elected to do is realize that when it comes to a Zoom session, you can't get much more than an hour and a half. Steve Blum will be talking this morning, I believe, about an updated analysis of San Luis Obispo. I don't recall whether it's this today or next Thursday, where we've got her name's escaping me at the moment. We've got some statewide leaders coming in. Jory, help me out. CETF, Sonny McPeak is Sonny McPeak is going to be one of their speakers. And so they've reached out, they've gotten some statewide policy folks. They're going to be talking big picture for the state of California, and then trying to drill down between the 2 sessions of what does it mean for San Luis Obispo County. So highly recommend, if you haven't signed up, consider going. I've talked about the Santa Barbara Fiber Ring and how it's following in much after the work that Jory's doing. They're looking for funding for their feasibility study, and that should be going to EDA in the next week or 2 weeks. And they've been having active conversations about that. I think I talked about the Digital Divide resolution coming out of the Digital Divide Coalition for Southern California. We're looking at 5G forums in the next quarter, and trying to talk to the telecoms about exactly the kinds of obstacles they see and what we can help them overcome, and the education that we can provide the community about what those future applications look like, and anything else that we need to talk about for the good of the order. Want to do any updates that you folks might have as well, any questions you might have, anything that we need to be weighing in and covering that we haven't done so far this morning. Everything is moving fast. These are exciting times. No questions. I guess that's good news. I guess we covered a lot.
Actually, one question, Bill. The San Luis Obispo forum this morning, is that being recorded, and will that be available after the fact?
That's a good question. I don't know. And I would assume so, but but I don't quote me on it, because I hate to be. I seem to recall they have a professional Zoom person running it, so I assume that she's going to be recording it. It would sound pretty fundamental.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill, question.
Yeah.
The Broadband Consortium is going to be pivoting the discussions in smart city initiatives at some point, now that we have accomplished at least the primary mission of deploying broadband networks, or bringing the conversation forward, et cetera. When does the pivot point really start to take effect, in your opinion, to smart cities?
I think that's a good question. Obviously we've started. I think that I tend to be thinking 2 to 3 years in advance. COVID was the catalyst that really brought it to, it's amazing what a difference a year makes. And telework and broadband, all of this stuff was not even on my radar a year ago. and all of a sudden it's essential. And so we've been doing this for 5 years, but we accomplished everything in the last year that it took the first 4 years to just plant the seeds for. So, you know, the pivot is taking place when we talk about, you know, the technologies that are involved. I really think the long pole is going to be the people issues. I think we're going to have to really, and that was the point. I can't tell you, between Bill Bartels, Noel, and Garrett, myself, the number of weeks we've been working on trying to get the scripting for those slides. Creating a community ready to transform itself with technology and work together is a pretty significant undertaking. And you know, honestly, we find that the conversation has got to start on this side of the fence. You know, a big part of this is, you know, playing the same. We use the metaphor of a dance floor. We can also use them, you know, everybody's got to bring their marbles. You know, they've all got to. It's like stone soup. You know, if you're familiar with that story, you know, everybody's gonna have to come together if the community is going to move forward, and that's what we're working very hard to. That's a fundamental message, and when they do, there's a lot of things that can be done. You know, but we've got to really work that people issue to get to that critical mass. And I suspect that the goal that I have would be, in the next several months, Guadalupe is out front, but there's communities in Ventura County, and there's communities in San Luis Obispo County that won't be too far behind in these convenings and these conversations. And as these communities roll out in the next 3, 6, 9 months in this direction, with stakeholders convening and doing and creating, working the zones that Jory's architected for us, you know, each of their zones is being built out. You know, people will notice, and they've already started noticed. You know, Jory, I don't want to speak for you, but at the same time, I'm not convinced. You know, you look at all those people you've talked to and all those presentations you made about the regional network. I'm not sure we would have had the same warm reception if it hadn't been for COVID lighting a fire in everybody's interest. My gosh, we've got to work together to do that.
Yeah, I do have to admit, I've been doing this for about 20 years, and kind of felt like I was working in the back room or in a laboratory. But now, because of COVID, this is really now out in the world, and everyone understands how important this utility is. I also, not only because everyone now has this new understanding of the digital world and how our lives will change to a great extent even after COVID. I think everyone also now realizes that this is reality, because there's a lot of money now being invested everywhere. You know, we used to go to conferences about broadband and it was just a small number of people. Today, ramping up before COVID, it was getting larger, but because of COVID, it's incredible. There's just not enough hours in the day to address all of the communities that are reaching out to consultants around the nation for assistance.
If I can add, just to answer George's question maybe a little more directly from the city side, because we are an end user of the smart city technology. For us, it's more of an issue of when the technology will solve an actual problem for us. So I don't think I've had a gunshot fired here for about 1.5 years. So I don't need to invest in gunshot detectors. You know, my parking downtown, we did a study at peak use, it's like 30%. So I don't need smart parking pathfinding when the current solution is you just drive 40 feet further and park. What I'm doing right now is building the infrastructure so when we fortunately get to a problem like we have too many people downtown, that I have all the infrastructure in place and just need to install the actual sensors and write the app, right? So when the technology gets there to solve real world problems that, you know, our community is facing, which are different than what other communities are facing, that's when I think you're going to find the demand. And I think what Jory and Bill are talking about is there is a recognition that you need to do some work now. You know, if you can imagine not having electricity or running water right now, you'd have nothing. You'd have no structures. Well, now we have structures. We need to build this infrastructure for the future. So when it does come, we can use it. And I think Bill's assessment that we are a couple of years away from that is probably pretty apt. But some clever entrepreneur is out there and has something that will solve a problem for us now. We're interested, or we're looking and we're buying. And smart irrigation control is probably the best example of that. It saves money, it reduces water, it's good for the environment. It's a win-win-win all around. But we did that years ago, and that's the smartest part I think you'll find in a lot of municipal operations.
My experience too, I don't know if you all know, like I worked at the city of Santa Monica, California, as their CIO for 22 years and implemented quite a bit of smart city applications. But as Brian says, we only implemented the smart city applications that solve community problems. And I think all of you pre-COVID went to Santa Monica and you understood what some of the community issues were there. It was development, and from development came traffic congestion to the nth degree. So our smart city applications were all around congestion management. They were transportation management centers. They were cameras in the public right of way. They were hold a light green for mass transit vehicles. They were real-time parking systems to guide and navigate people to parking spaces on the street and in the downtown and the beach parking lots and the downtown parking structures. It was really all about solving a community problem. Definitely. But one of the important things that you have to understand is that we had to build a broadband infrastructure to enable us to build smart city. It is not feasible in many cases to be able to afford to lease all of those circuits for those smart city IP enabled devices, cameras and sensors and controllers and things of that sort. To lease those from the private sector would be overwhelming in terms of what it would do to your capital, what it would do to your general fund budgets. So investment in broadband is not only key for digital literacy and improvements in economic development and a way of life, but it's key for government innovation as well.
If I can make this quick comment, a bit of a non sequitur, but somebody had mentioned this earlier, and I sit on the SCAG CEHD, and they're working on their broadband resolution right now. Yeah. And one of the comments I made is that COVID, the language pre-COVID was always just download speed, but now we always have to pair it with upload speed because of all the, mostly this kind of interactions that we're doing right now. So in all our language, if we're talking about it, it needs to be 110 or 120 or something like that, but we've got to emphasize upload speeds as strong as we do download speeds.
Andy, any thoughts about Santa Paula? I neglected to invite you and Jamie and Brian just to give any city updates in terms of where you're at and your thinking. We can.
We don't have an update. Our committee will be meeting, I believe, next week finally. So as we mentioned, we've got some new staff on board. So, but other than that, no updates.
Okay. Brian, Jamie, any updates at all? You can certainly hold off till next meeting as well.
I'll just real quickly, I'll air some dirty laundry because Dory and Melanie, I haven't told this yet, but our council last night did approve funding for a market study, which Magellan will be doing for our Meet Me room as part of our new library construction. Again, we just want to confirm that there's a market before we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building it, that someone will use it. So we'll be moving forward on that.
Can I make a suggestion about that, just to keep in the back of your mind?
Please.
With what happened in Nashville just after Christmas, I think that if there is a way to create ubiquity and self-healing within the Meet Me rooms for the county to become less reliant on One Wilshire, I think that would be a real benefit, just in the interest of self-healing communication if there's ever an event at One Wilshire or downtown LA.
I will have to rely on my consultants for that level of expertise.
I wanted to have one additional thought passing on related to the discussion of Guadalupe and these communities and transformation. And that is, it goes back to George's fundamental question of when is that tipping point going to occur? It's going to be a while before we're into the new normal, but the new normal is going to be very, very different. What we're finding in Guadalupe, in this business council and these people starting to work through a process where they're wanting to talk about the community network, convene stakeholders, there's a lot of new people coming in from LA. We're getting people that do incubators in LA. We're getting people that do Hollywood production in LA. I mean, there is a migration out of the cities that north and south into the Central Coast that we have not, we're just scratching the surface on and just beginning to see and understand. And it's going to be huge. And it's very easy. We all probably say, well, that's Guadalupe. That's the way it's always been. It's the way it'll always be. No, it's not. You ought to hear the conversations that are taking place. It's just phenomenal in terms of the vision. You're having these, it's new blood being pumped into a town that just don't have any walls. It's wonderful conversations about what you can do virtually with broadband. You can go to the theaters, you can connect with, and create this kind of community right here in town. And you can do global stuff without even leaving this town and have a high quality of life. So I think that's a microcosm to what we're going to be seeing everywhere. I was in a call with the Navy yesterday, and NAVC has 6 buildings in the Washington, D.C. shipyards that they're now downsizing from 6 to 1. They're decided that what they want to do is have everybody be disparate, be, telework, and they're going to reduce their footprint, by 5/6. It's just, I think we're going to see a watershed, kind of change in terms of how we organize ourselves and how we live. And, I don't think we know what that's going to look like yet, but I do believe it's coming. And it'll be, absolutely amazing. And so these conversations about people connecting with each other, they're very important.
I just want to add one. It is exciting because we're seeing that the real estate purchase across Santa Barbara County, because of the disparate nature of the workforce now, it's booming, but a lot of people who can afford to purchase in a competitive market, which is wonderful for us economically, because then we'll see Santa Barbara County as a whole, in our case, actually, and other, I think, coastal communities as well, economically rebound slightly faster with the workforce, with a tier 2 workforce and a tier 1 workforce that's going to be able to be employed gainfully and be able to contribute to us, which is a wonderful thing. But the one thing I would just say is, from a community foundation perspective, it is also concerning about the marginalized communities. It's also concerning that disparity would grow. So the work that you're doing, the urgency for us lies in the fact to build that access. I love the 4th utility concept, to build that access as this economic mobility happens and build economic mobility as this economy does turn back around for our county. We're very fortunate in that way. So I really appreciate everything that I've heard today and your lens on this as well.
Thank you. Any other comments for the good of the order here? I just want to thank you guys all for coming and being part of this conversation. We'll do it again soon. So, all right. With that, for those able, we'll see you in San Luis Obispo.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.